Hi guys, Scott Kubes. I'm with a company called Orbiwise, and I do chair the Smart Agriculture Working Group. That's a subset of the marketing group of the LoRa Alliance. So it's a pleasure to be here. Quickly introduce our colleagues here that are on the panel today, and we'll be talking a bit about smart agriculture and how LoRaWAN is really an ideal solution to meet many of the needs, not all the needs, because as usual, the Alliance, we don't ever say that LoRaWAN is the solution for everything, but we do think it fits the bill, is able to solve many of the problems that exist in agriculture relative to IoT. So I'll introduce Scott Waller with ThingyIoT, Williamson Silva with Approve IoT, and Alastair Williamson from Wyld Networks. And so if you could just say hello, guys, and tell everybody a bit about yourselves. I think you got your mics here. And we'll start with that real quick. So Scott, if you want to take the lead.
Thanks, Scott. Scott Waller, CEO and co-founder of ThingyIoT. We're an integrator, a sensor manufacturer, as well as a network operator, and we focus on environmental monitoring. You probably saw a bit this morning about wildfires, agriculture, and public safety.
Hello, my name is Williamson. I'm from Brazil. I work for Approved. It's an American company that operates the product regulatory and certificate market in more 200 country or territory. We have employees available in strategic countries, for example, Brazil, Mexico, Japan, China, Finland, etc. And stay here for participate in this event. It's thank you for inviting.
Hello, my name's Alastair Williamson. I'm the CEO of Wyld Networks, and very happy to be here. But just to talk a bit about what we do at Wyld is that we're a virtual satellite IoT operator, actually focusing on LoRaWAN as the technology for terrestrial coverage and also satellite coverage.
Thanks, guys. So, and just quickly, I'm with a company called Orbiwise, and we actually provide the LoRaWAN network server, so the software that kind of manages the network. So the idea actually with the blend of the folks on the panel here today, and these are companies, a few of them at least, that are quite active within the Smart Agriculture Committee, but you got a really great blend of the backgrounds and the perspectives they bring in. Somebody that's out in the field getting their hands dirty, somebody dealing with regulatory and type approval, and somebody, a network operator that's really reaching out to the far corners and dealing actually with a lot of the challenges that we feel LoRaWAN reaches to. And of course, I get to see that as well, speaking from putting my hat on. So with that in mind, guys, of course, IoT and smart agriculture these days is a big catchphrase. You read all sorts of stuff about John Deere and all the big ag companies doing precision farming and all these neat things, which is really great. And that's certainly one part of the equation. But what do you see? What have you seen with your companies in your particular perspective, things, challenges with smart agriculture, and the things that IoT can kind of address from your perspective in these different backgrounds. So we'll lead with Alastair.
Okay, great question. If I can give you just 3 facts, and these facts are the foundation of why Wyld exists and what we're trying to achieve. I think the population's set to grow by another 7 billion people at the moment. There's another 2 billion people coming onto this planet by 2050, and today we can't feed ourselves. Problem number 1. Problem number 2, 30% of the waste of water comes from agriculture. Problem number 2. Those problems we can solve using IoT technologies, in particular LoRaWAN as a technology. But I think the other challenge we also need to address, and this is what we're looking at, and that is that only 20% of the Earth's surface has access to wireless networks. So the other 80%, and let's be honest, predominantly agriculture is in that 80% where there's no wireless coverage. So we need to address that problem as well. So I think we collectively as a group really need to understand how LoRaWAN and IoT can solve those problems in increasing the yield of crop and reducing the waste of water. And those are the two applications we're really focusing on in agriculture.
Okay. Wilson, can you kind of take it from there, and what are you seeing from a regulatory, dealing with governments and type approvals and so forth?
Yes, LoRa use the ECMS for bands, and the regulator is fixed for Brazil, FCC, CE is the same for the test environment, and I can see many products LoRa inside for the marketing and the certification, and it's easy for improve the agriculture for example, in Brazil. Brazil is a big country and have many other different agriculture farms, the work and topography, and the IoT and LoRa, it's help them, the rural people, for work, for improving your production, and Anatel, FCC, and CE, it's appropriate for certifications, just products, and adapted for the specific product, the specific standards for testing, for security. The people use this product for the camp, the farm, etc.
Okay. Scott, I know you've always got some really good stories out picking grapes or apples or
Yes,
something
yes.
interesting. But,
I think one of the my perspective has always been that connectivity is not a guaranteed. So as Alastair was saying, the majority of farms in America and around the world are in very rural areas. Right? Large swaths of land, but also challenging environments, lots of topography. Think of Western United States. We've got mountains all over the place. So connectivity is not guaranteed. A lot of those areas are they have less connectivity options. We joke about, I've said it on some of our calls before, 0G out in the middle of a farm. So, for agriculture, you need a couple different things, right? We need digital insights to how the plants and their crops are behaving, how they're responding to climate change, to lack of water, to lack of resources, controlling the amount of fertilizer. Well, you need digital insights, right? We need a sensor platform and a connectivity solution that can reach at scale at a low cost into these different farms. One of the challenges we see is, you mentioned John Deere and others, and the very large commodity crops, the annual crops, row crops, thousands and thousands of acres. They're actually fairly advanced in their IoT journey and digitization journey, right? Tractors that are planting and mapping everything geospatially. Whereas in more permanent crops or specialty crops, think of apples, pears, cherries, wine grapes. They're very fickle and they take years to grow. And the methodologies that farmers have used over the years with the onset of climate change, the lack of water, is challenging for them. So in an area you don't have connectivity, you have a limited set of resources, humans, there's less labor. Yeah. So how do you address that by a set of technology and a connectivity solution that basically gives farmers tools, insights into what their crops are doing? There's definitely a challenge, and connectivity is the number one thing. It's not guaranteed, especially in these areas. So I think, Alastair, we were talking earlier, in some places there's just no connectivity. So where do you start? Is that satellite versus terrestrial, or some in maybe rural America where you have some legacy connectivity, you got some wireline and some fiber access, but do we start from ground zero with something brand new, or build on top of legacy LTE networks and augment it with something like LoRaWAN? So it's a balance.
Oh, no, that's excellent points. A nice tie together between the three subject matter experts here. And it is an interesting thing when you think about dealing with really remote areas. You take something like Brazil, and I know some of the experiences, at least I've had, you're out in the middle of nowhere. There is no internet connection. There is no wireless connection. You have the option, you can build like a local network and keep it localized. You can try to link via satellite and connect down. And this is now taking it from a LoRaWAN perspective. So we've talked about IoT in these challenging environments and challenging times. How do you see LoRaWAN really being an ideal solution? Once again, not the only one, but really that can address a lot of this, though, in some of these really, and it can be even, places like, you say, Western U.S., you would think, wow, well, I got cell coverage, I can, but, when you have to ensure that your coverage is there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on again, off again, a lot of times doesn't really cut it. So how do you see LoRaWAN? How does that tie in from where your companies are at and what you're seeing in your experiences with groups, governments, and everything? How does LoRaWAN really, to me, it stands out as one of those technologies to answer these challenges? So we'll start with Wilson. So.
Yes, the LoRaWAN is inside for technology resolution many problems for topography. You see it for Brazil. Brazil, it's a different topography. It's depend for states, depend for the location, have a problem for connection. But the Brazil government, it's improved for new investment in this area for technology, for improve the university, the college, for studied more about LoRa, about the 5G, about the other technology. It's partner for Anatel, for any other laboratories, and improve more the specific topic. Farms and agricultures use the sensor, tractors use the monitor for agriculture, and it's a challenge, but I believe in South America, the people, not a government, but the people work more for the technology, the IoT is now in all countries in the South America.
Well, interesting question, and if I can come at it from a perspective of what we've done in Wyld. So our challenge was to fix the problem of lack of global connectivity, hence the fact we started to look at low Earth orbiting satellites. But another key factor in the challenge we put in front of ourselves was how do we create affordable connectivity? And that's really key to driving this forward. And that's where we decided LoRaWAN was the technology that we were going to adopt. It was the affordability in implementing LoRaWAN, not on just terrestrial connectivity, but also on satellite connectivity. So we use LoRaWAN as a technology and protocol to actually send data to satellites. So we're actually using the ISM band, which is regulated, but it's free of charge. And so we've really focused on what's the technology that allows us to deliver both the terrestrial and at affordable terrestrial and satellite service, and that really came down to LoRaWAN really was the solution. On top of that, the low power capability really resonated with markets we were going after, particularly that 80% there's no coverage. So it's for Wyld, it was a simple choice, and we chose LoRaWAN as our technology for both the terrestrial and satellite coverage piece.
So, Scott, you want to take it from there, because I know this is one of your favorite topics that we've had in our calls. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I could take it from where Alastair left off, and that's obviously low cost is huge. If a farmer has to decide on, I'm going to spend $10,000 on a technology that improves my yield or reduces my amount of water consumption because of climate change and drought conditions, blah blah blah. If I want to take that $10,000, what am I apply it to? Am I going to buy a new tractor? I'm going to hire some labor? Am I going to replace the irrigation system with just traditional methods today? Or am I going to augment it with some type of digital technology? So it has to be super cost effective, because if the traditional way of doing things is cheaper than deploying $10,000 $100 sensors on a cellular-based technology, and I also have the maintenance cost associated with larger batteries, solar panels. We've talked about solar panels in agriculture are bad. Tractors love to eat them up. I swear it's a game with farmers. I've seen that over the years. But one of the things, there's the cost-effective side, but I think of what, as an integrator and someone who's out in the farms dealing with things, we talked about the diversity of topology causing issues on connectivity in these rural areas. It's the ecosystem of the LoRaWAN sensors. That's very specifically, if I have a weather station or solution or water monitoring, or we're doing air quality or whatever it may be, or soil moisture, connectivity is different as I move down the coast in my travels and deploy networks and sensors. But the one thing that's constant is the array of sensors that is available, tested, certified in the LoRaWAN ecosystem that allows me to go, wow, I have a set of assets either I've created myself or we have in the ecosystem that gives me the opportunity to connect to something that's common and standard and open. But at the same time, as Alastair pointed out, it might not be just a terrestrial connectivity solution. We've been partnering with Wyld and Lacuna and Swarm Space and others. Satellite is an option that we need to have, and being able to have a sensor, a set of solutions that can go both terrestrial and satellite is going to be huge, because in the United States, I'd love to say there's LoRaWAN everywhere, but it's not happening in the United States like it is in Europe. So.
Oh, instead of whispering to Scott, I'll just say we're going to go into Q&A now. I'm trying to do sign language.
dropped the
How do you
mic.
say Q&A in sign language? So with that, was there anyone else that wanted to say anything on that topic?
Well, no, if we're approaching our time, we'll go ahead and do some questions. If not, I'll think of something
I also have a
to
question.
challenge our...
I have a question.
good.
I'll kick it off, but please do ask the panel a question. And again, this is meant to be casual and informative. So I'm curious, with technology sometimes not moving quick enough, if you could snap your fingers and have something happen right now that would make all of your missions get a little bit closer to where you want it to be, what would it be?
Satellites up into space that natively do LoRaWAN and then pass over at 15-minute intervals or less.
Okay.
That's my
Well,
answer as well. So I think you'll find that answer is, satellites passing overhead every 15 minutes and collecting data and helping farmers, give them insight to how to help solve these problems we talked about earlier.
And how far are we from that point? Is that a dream or is that on its way?
It's real. And it's not just Wyld. There's other companies Scott talked about that are up there providing these solutions. It's in its infancy, I'd say, and I think you'll see it develop over the next 2 to 3 years to the point where it just becomes ubiquitous.
I can see the many products for certification in South America. LoRaWAN, it's a reality for use in agriculture and transports and cargo, etc. And probably in few years, I see many other products installed in the farms and the tractors and the everything products for helping many people.
And so, yeah, that brings up kind of maybe another good question to pose to you guys. So we've got this wonderful technology in LoRaWAN. We've got experts here, people that have worked with some agriculture companies to implement this solution. We've got an ecosystem. We've got all these great things. What do we need to do to improve the education and knowledge about this solution so that it is adopted on a much broader scale? And I know we've discussed this within the working group many, many times and kind of scratch our heads on this, but especially sitting here with a little bit of an audience here, and this will go out, what can we do to make the adoption of LoRaWAN speed up, kind of taking on Zuzi's question. So
I can take
I'm
it.
not even look. I'll glare at you because I know this has been one of our favorite
and I'll
discussion
keep it
points.
brief.
So
I think one of the, we brought this up. Still there?
Yeah.
We brought this up in our conversation. Is how does the LoRa Alliance and the entire community market this to really address the needs of the farmers? You talk to a farmer, he can barely say LoRaWAN. I'm not saying it's a capability, but it's like they say LoRaWAN. It's hilarious. They don't care about the technology. They care about the solution that addresses their problems, hands down. Do we go after the very large companies of the world, the big tech companies of the world, to address that? They're trying to do that. The cloud providers are trying to do that, the big tech companies. Do we go to the John Deeres or the Bayer Monsantos of the world? Or do we actually go after an entire community of dealers, distributors, and installers that address the needs of the farmers today? Think about the sales force around tractors and implements and tools, seed distributors, fertilizer distributors, pesticide distributors. Educate them on the benefit with an entire solution set and empower them to go sell it to the farmers because they have the trust of the farmers. The farmer doesn't trust a technologist.
I think you're absolutely right there, Scott. You've got to address it through both the large corporates, the Bayers of the world, etc., but you also need to get down to the distributors and the integrators, the resellers of seed, because these guys have the trust of the farming community and they just want their data. They don't care how they get their data, they just want their data. I'd also say that I think we should also start to look at the insurance companies. I think they're going to start to make a play in this area where, particularly now, we see what's happening with the security on food supply chain. I think we should start to approach these guys. In the UK, it's the NFU. It's a huge insurance company focusing on agriculture. Not anymore, but used to focus on agriculture. And these are the guys we should also be speaking to get that message out to the end users.
I believe the same my colleagues, but I think it's important for show this better technology for the college, the technology, and have a more instruction about this important technology in the many areas. For example, sensor inside house, sensor for care the cow, the anything animals, and the fishing culture, and the future professionals for technology need know more the LoRaWAN, need know more about this technology, because now it's know about the 5G, about the cell phone technology, about the Bluetooth technology, but they not know the LoRaWAN, they not know the expertise for this technology. It is important for the college experiment for this technology, this improve your experiment in college for when inside for college. Oh, I learned about the technology LoRa in my college and implement here, create a new product. It's incentivate for the college inside this technology in new products.
educating that next generation is, actually an excellent point. So with that, I mean, I don't know
Are
if there's
there
any other...
any questions from the
Somebody must
audience?
have some kind of question out
Let me
there.
bring you the microphone.
Thank you. I would like to react, in fact, to the first question about the lack of coverage for the LoRaWAN, and the first reaction on the panel was to think about satellite connectivity. Have you considered 5G extended networks instead? Because a single 5G antenna can cover hundreds of miles around it, and technically will be cheaper than satellite connection with less latency, more bandwidth, and probably easier to implement than pushing more satellite up space to have more coverage. So is it something that you think would be easier than hoping for satellite connectivity?
I mean, I guess satellite is one angle, and I'll let Alastair speak to the whole cost thing there. And
Yeah,
but you can even build local LoRaWAN networks, which is something that I've done, which is certainly very cost effective. And I think you'd probably have something to say about the cost of satellite.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I'll address the 5G question in a second, but you know, what we're looking at is a hybrid terrestrial satellite solution. We need to continue to provide terrestrial coverage and grow that terrestrial coverage. The satellite piece is really just providing coverage where the affordability of rolling out a terrestrial network is not there. So it's all about creating a hybrid terrestrial LoRaWAN satellite network. And I think when the question on the 5G bit, to be honest with you, I've looked at 5G. I lived 5G. I was there when it was 2G. I'm that old. But to be honest with you, I just don't see the return on the investment for operators to look at rolling out NB-IoT or 5G to provide coverage, particularly in agriculture. It's just not there.
Yeah, I must admit, I think the idea of stretching that way out into the Amazon seems a bit... maybe I'm wrong, but I just, it seems...
So I got a little perspective on this. Another role, and not everyone knows this, but I'm the CTO of the 5G Open Innovation Lab based in Bellevue, Washington, and so we're trying to incubate startups and the carriers and the biggest technology companies in the world in how we do things like edge compute and all the edge cool stuff that we have. But it's not about, in agriculture, it's not about one connectivity versus the other. Alastair said it right. When I talk to the carriers in the rural areas, are you going to put up 5G capabilities out here, extend the reach of that coverage? No, it doesn't make business sense right now. Down the road, will it happen? Yes. Right now, as it stands, farmers need connectivity of some sort. They need both connectivity, so it's not exclusive one or the other. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things in the opening discussion, I think it was Tony Shakib was talking about, was it's going to be both. Because what I see out there is, I need connectivities for sensors that run on a battery for 10 years. A farmer doesn't want to replace the battery every year or every season. I want it 10 years in the ground, reporting small bits of data. Use that data insights in a data lake to make informed decisions around. Then I take the high bandwidth, low latency applications like augmented reality, autonomous tractors, and apply that with things like either public 5G or private 5G. We're actually testing, I've got it out on a farm, we're testing, funny enough, 5G, private 5G installation on a farm with SpaceX Starlink as a backhaul, and it works. So it's about solving the connectivity problem for the use case at the time in the most cost-effective way. The promise of 5G everywhere is going to come, but it's going to be a mixture of LoRaWAN, satellite, public and private LTE connectivity of some sort down the road, and it's going to take time. But it depends on which region you're in.
Well put. We're getting a thumbs up on the answer there, so that's good. So,
Are there any last questions? Yes. And I encourage all of you to connect with the gentleman through your LoRa app so you can continue the conversations after this week.
Okay, so first of all, a very interesting topic. I was hearing about the hybrid solution of having both terrestrial and satellite communication, and I wanted to know what's the hardest part of having a standardized solution that can work worldwide for this type of monitorization.
Do you want to take the standardization? So I think I'll take it. So from the approach of a sensor manufacturer, the challenge in the satellite side is it's still a little bit. There's some proprietariness to it, right? So what radio chipsets you choose, what platform you choose, the availability of the satellites and all that stuff, it's a little complicated to be able to say, hey, I want to be able to create a single solution that roams across all of them. It's not quite there. We're getting there as a sensor manufacturer. But as an integrator, there's the solutions that are out there that the promise of what these guys are doing on both terrestrial and a satellite side, and be able to roam between those. I won't go into the regulatory stuff about roaming between those locations, but I know there's a lot of work in the working groups, the technical committees, the regional parameters group on how we can actually solve that, and I know these guys are.
But certainly
deeply involved.
LoRaWAN, I mean, if you look at the ecosystem in general, really the interoperability, you know, you don't like one sensor, you know, there's another sensor guy. As long as they're adhering to the LoRaWAN, it's going to be interoperable. And the same is true for the LoRaWAN server. There will be other satellite networks. There will be other regulatory, any of the players that you see sitting on stage here. This is part of an ecosystem of interchangeable parts that you have the option as that end user. So I think you would find it's a pretty, you know, standardized approach towards a IoT network. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, if there are no other questions, I would like to thank you, Scott, for organizing this great panel, and Alastair, Wilson, and Scott. Thank you for being here. At 2 p.m., we have a smart buildings conversation, very much like this one. And at 2:30, I will be interviewing the inventors of the LoRa technology, so that should be really fun. Okay. So thank you all. Have a beautiful conference, and we'll see you back here soon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's good.